Joel Rubin is a former State Department Deputy Assistant Secretary for House Affairs. Joins us from the Washington Bureau. Joel, great to see you.
Great to be with you.
At the debate last night, there was a lot of talk about our allies, and especially those who are most affected by instability in the Middle East. How do you encourage them to stand up more and fight ISIS right there on the ground where they are?
Right now, we're at an inflection point in this fight. The countries in the Middle East it really are the ones most directly affected. But as we see, ISIS can reach out and have terror attacks that they're exacting a major toll on our population and on us. And it's very, very scary. But these countries do need to ensure that their borders are secure, that their violence inside of Syria, inside of Iraq is calmed down. And that means that we have to continue to push forward with our multilateral efforts to support them, to encourage them to do the right thing, both in terms of taking care of refugees as well as taking the fight directly to ISIS on a military level, but also against its propaganda. Ultimately, this is going to be one if the people who are getting attracted to ISIS are no longer attracted to it, and that will take a significant effort of intellectual and moral support as well as military support.
All right, so let's just take Syria as an example. You've got hundreds of thousands of people fleeing the violence in Syria. Who's left on the ground truly to stand up and fight ISIS? And oh, by the way, ISIS is on the same side as some of the people who are fearful of ISIS. They all want to see Bashar al-Assad out of power. It's a complicated situation.
Exactly. It is a very dynamic, multidimensional problem right now. ISIS is linked in many ways to Saddam Hussein's old regime. Many of their generals come from Saddam, and the disintegration of Iraq as a result of the Iraq War and the ongoing violence there spilling into Syria. Assad is a tyrannical leader, and he has been barrel bombing his people. We now have over 10 million internally displaced people or refugees, and it's devastating. And the families there, the people living in Syria, are caught in a vice between ISIS and Assad. What we need to make sure we're doing is working with all of the players who have influence in there. And that means Iran, that means Russia, that means the regional players in Turkey.
Does it mean Assad?
And it means that Assad has to understand that his regime and the backing for his regime is contingent upon him pulling back and no longer executing military activities. And that is going to be something that as a message, it has to be delivered by his backers. We have 50 special forces troops
Joel, what
right
you're
now
talking
there.
about now
Yes.
is different than what the president has been saying. The administration has been saying Assad has to go. Period. There's been no room for any sort of nuance about whether there's a path for Assad to remain in leadership at this point.
The vision of Assad having to go is a strong one, and it's the right one. But that is not possible to enact at this moment unless we, the United States and other countries in the West, begin to put in forces on the ground at levels that we are not currently willing to commit. But what we can do is push forward on a diplomatic process to get him out of the way. But we really need to make sure that this humanitarian crisis, and you spoke about it earlier, that this gets calmed down. Right now, the refugee crisis coming out of Syria in the hundreds of thousands is destabilizing the region. It's going into Europe, and it's devastating for the people who live there. That has to change if there's going to be any hope of moving Assad out.
Finally, we heard the French president, Francois Hollande, say that this was an act of war on France. According to the United States commitment to NATO, when one of our allied NATO nations is under attack in war, we are obligated to come to its aid and assistance. What does this mean for us in a very real way in the fight against ISIS?
Well, in a very real way, this means that we will be and should be providing the kind of support for military operations in Iraq and in Syria that our allies are requesting as part of the Article 5, if that is invoked. That has not yet been invoked, it has not been put forward, but if it is through the process at NATO, then that would require us to provide that kind of support. And this then comes into a clash as well here domestically. We currently do not have an authorization for the use of military force in Iraq and in Syria that is refreshed from the 2001 authorization and the 2002 intersperses with that. That is a debate that Congress needs to have about what we're going to do to continue to strengthen our ability to fight ISIS. It is a very complex fight. It requires multiple partners, military activity, law enforcement, focus at home, focus abroad, and we don't have an authorization right now on that military action, but that will, you can be assured, be coming up in Congress in the days ahead as Article 5 is discussed.
Joel Rubin, great to talk to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.